Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 480, and today's date is September 30th, 2014, and the title of this episode is the U.S. Government Meddling in the Hong Kong Protests? And when we look at this looks very, very similar to Ukraine. And we've already had statements from the United States saying that they're backing the protesters, and we can see that we're heading down the track of where we were with Ukraine. And we understand why the U.S. is getting involved in this. We understand why they are doing this, because you have to remember, China is on the verge of becoming the reserve currency. They are buying tons and tons of gold. They are part of the BRIC nations. They are making deals all around the world, bilateral trade deals. They are making deals with Russia. They are setting up clearinghouses. They have just opened their exchange in Shanghai for gold, physical gold. And we can see right now that this is being pushed, and the United States central bankers, they realize that, whoa, wait a minute, we need to stop this, and they're going to try and do whatever they possibly can to stop this. They've tried to have protests in Russia, but as what Putin has done is he removed all those organizations that had ties to the United States, like U.S. Aid. He's not allowing foreign passports to own more than 20% of the media. And right now, China is out there, and they are saying the U.S. is meddling in the protests. And of course, we know they do this. We saw Ukraine. We see the entire Middle East. We see Venezuela, where they tried to infiltrate that government. We see Afghanistan, where the U.S. was in there trying to manipulate the elections to get their man inside to pass the bilateral security agreement. And this wouldn't really surprise me. And we are having information come out that, yes, certain individuals in this entire protest do have ties to the United States, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this report. But let's get into the economic collapse news now. Europe is really not getting better whatsoever. We are in a depression. I mean, most of the countries there are just barely staying afloat here. The Eurozone youth unemployment rate is at 23.3% as of this August. The figure has not even dropped by a percentage point since its peak in February last year. Greek unemployment for the youth around ages 25 is around 51.5%. It's now second to Spain, which comes in at 53.7%. Now, every single nation in the Eurozone is not exactly the same, as we know. Germany right now, youth unemployment is around 7.6. Austria is around 8.2%. But what's happening is they are moving and inching up every single month. They are going a little bit higher, a little bit higher. And we know for a fact that the youth of the country, this is the backbone for the next generation. If they're not working and saving, you're not going to see retail sales. You're not going to see them buy houses. They're not going to buy cars. They're not going to add revenue into the government to pay for all this debt. And we can see right now it is really starting to hurt the European nations, and things are just getting worse as we go down in time here. I mean, if we go back to 2013, the Eurozone was out there screaming that they're in a recovery, they're heading out of the recession, and everything is fine. And of course, back then, they thought they were going to war with Syria. They thought they were getting the whole entire war started, and that completely fell apart. And that's why there was a huge run-up during that period in time. We're seeing the same thing happen now. The war is on. They're pushing it as hard as they can. This is why you hear so much talk about recovery. But when we look at real economic indicators, we know there is absolutely no recovery whatsoever. Even the European numbers are now starting to be fabricated. Eurostat has said, yes, the inflation data is wrong. They pretty much fabricated. They got caught. They apologized, and now they're rerunning the numbers. And of course, we saw that inflation was non-existent in the Eurozone. They're looking at this, and they're going to redo all the numbers, and we'll see how this turns out. We saw this happen in Canada with unemployment. We see it continually happen in the United States, and everyone in each one of these countries needs to continually manipulate the numbers because, again, the government numbers do not match what's really going on in the economy. Now, in the UK, the British consumer morale edged down for a recent 9-year high this month as households became slightly less upbeat about the outlook for the economy and their personal finances. Many people are not themselves feeling any better off despite the growth in GDP. And we're seeing this spread across Europe into UK, Germany, and all the other nations where they're starting to feel that something is not right. The outlook does not look good, even though the government continually tells them that everything is fine. Here in the United States, what we're seeing is that consumer confidence plunged to a record low here. It tumbled to 86.0. It missed the expectations of 92.5. This is the biggest miss since January of 2012. The Chicago PMI printed at 60.5. Of course, they expected it 62. And again, this is completely declining, and this is also a drop in new orders and production. Now, what's very interesting about all these numbers that are starting to come out, we're seeing real estate. Now, we discussed real estate quite a bit here, and we understand that pending home sales are declining, mortgage applications are declining, refinancing applications are declining, and we are now starting to see that prices are falling. They're seeing a broad-based deceleration of homes. Case-Shiller is out there, and they're saying, yes, we do see this now for the third month in a row. Case-Shiller home prices fell month on month with July's 0.5% drop from the biggest since November 2011. This dragged the year-on-year growth to 6.75%, missing expectations of 7.4%, and it's the slowest rate of increase since November of 2012. San Francisco was the biggest drag on the index. They're declining quite quickly. This is the fourth miss in a row for a year-on-year home price gains. Prices fall for the third month in a row, not stopping. And we looked at the real estate market. If we go back to the spring, when they were saying it was the weather and it was everything else, we knew exactly what it was. People do not have credit. People do not have jobs. People are underemployed. They're just getting by. Their credit is ruined. They're not looking at this saying, you know what, I need to get another house. They're looking at the economy saying, God, I just got to make it to the next month. And we see that all of this that the government is throwing at us is completely fake, phony, and false, and we're starting to really see it in the real economic indicators. The stock market is absolutely meaningless because that is the last indication that, yes, the economy has failed. Now, it's been failing all up to this point, but of course, the government, the central bankers, they don't want to tell you that it's failing. They want everyone in the stock market. And this is why we're seeing a big trade-off now of institutional investors and insiders trying to dump their stock and sell it to the retail investor to get them in, because this is what happens during the end game. They get the retail investors in. This is what happened with real estate back in 2007, 2008. All the insiders, all those people dumped their real estate, got everyone else in on it, and then it collapsed. We're seeing the same thing happen, and as we go through this fall and winter, real estate is really going to take a dive. The big investors are out. They're no longer purchasing homes with cash. Yes, you see a few here and there, but most of them are getting out. They're trying to get rid of the homes. They're trying to sell it to the everyday speculator, the flipper, hoping that they'll take this home, hold on to it, and eventually what's going to happen is they won't be able to sell it. And I looked around the country, and what am I seeing? Yes, prices are definitely coming down. Houses are on the market 60, 90, 120 days. And this is a huge indicator to let us know how the economy is doing, because we already know that retail is completely falling apart. We see Ford already telling us that the revenue's down, that people are just not buying cars at this point. Even though they're continually throwing out auto loans to the subprime, they can't keep it up because most of the people are like, you know what, I can't afford this anyhow. The payment is too high. You can give me a loan, but I can't afford this. Okay, now as we know, the debt across the private Western central bank countries is really unsustainable. We know this here in the United States, throughout the different countries inside Europe, and what we're seeing right now is the debt level has hit a record level of 158.8 trillion in global debt. Together with low economic growth is creating a serious threat of new financial crisis, and this is coming from the 16th annual Geneva report. And what we're seeing right now is they're looking around and they're seeing this, and they're seeing so much debt. GDP, industrialized nations are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that is manufacturing and producing, because most of these companies have been moved offshore. There is no manufacturing left in many of the countries, and with the debt load and with unemployment, all of this cannot be sustained. Now, Obama is out there, and again, he's trying to convince everyone that the economy is doing well. And I've said this in many of my reports, and those people who have been listening to me for quite a while, if the economy is doing well, you will feel it. You'll know that you have a job. You'll feel pretty secure. You'll know you'll have money coming in. You'll get a cost of living raise each year. You'll realize that, hey, things are good. I can go spend my money because I feel secure. That is a real economy. A government official or a central banker coming down telling you that the economy is great, the economy is great, and they need to convince you over and over and over, and you don't feel it, you know this is completely fake, phony, and false. And this is exactly what President Obama is trying to do. He's saying that the economy is the best that it's ever been, and he understands that people aren't really feeling it, but you have to believe it. So it reminds me of Obamacare. To read it, you got to approve it. You got to vote for it. Well, here, what you're hearing from him is that the economy is really not doing well. He's trying to convince Americans that yes, the economy is doing well, and of course, he's blaming this on, that the wages aren't going up. But what's really happening, yes, wages aren't going up, but for those people who've had those jobs and their wages are not going up and they're really not getting cost of living, yeah, they feel a little bit, but not much. But all those people who've been laid off who can't find the same paid job, or who are underemployed or can't find a job, those are the people that are really suffering, and those are the people who are really not looking at this and saying, you know what, yeah, the economy's great, because they're continually putting out resumes, nothing's coming back, and they're saying, what's wrong with this economy? And of course, as you know, the unemployment numbers are completely manipulated, and it's looking like, yes, the economy's doing well because the unemployment numbers are down, but it's completely it's a complete illusion to everyone who is out there. And of course, once you're in the government, the government, you really can't see what's going on outside in the real world. Yeah, you can visit different places, but you're making tons of money. Most of the people in government have become the wealthiest they've ever been, and they're living in a different realm. They don't understand what is going on here, and of course, they kind of do, because they realize the economy is coming crashing down, but they need to continually convince you that everything is fine. And guess what? Looking at the stock market doesn't make anything fine whatsoever. All it does is show you that, yeah, the insiders are making money, the rest of the country is completely falling apart. And we saw this back in 1929, where the stock market was hitting all-time new highs of about 400 or so points, but the rest of the country were in tent cities on bread lines, soup lines. People couldn't live in their homes, and they were trying to convince everyone that the economy was just fine. Now, it looks like Singapore right now is becoming the global gold hub. Singapore continues its push to be a global gold hub. The new exchange-traded Singapore kilobar gold contracts will launch in less than 2 weeks on October 13th. The new contract is a 1 kilogram physically deliverable gold contract for the Asian and global wholesale gold market. The new gold contract differs from others in that, as well as acting as a price discovery benchmark for 1 kilogram gold bars in the Asian region, it has been specifically designed to actually deliver gold to large buyers, wholesalers, and institutions, presumably including central banks. Settlement of the contract is in gold, 1 kilobar, and not in cash. A 1 kilogram gold bar is 32.15 troy ounces. Physical settlement is 2 days after trade date and consists of 99.99 purity and 1 kilogram gold bars that meet the approval of the Singapore Bullion Market Association good delivery list. This means that the wholesaler will be able to gauge demand and supply of these bars over the following weeks. So we can see they're really pushing the physical market right now, and with China, Singapore, this will definitely have an effect on the gold market. Now, of course, we know the central bankers are going to try to manipulate the market as best they possibly can because they don't want gold to go up, because this is a huge indicator to show that something is wrong in the economy. And if the gold goes up, that means the value of the dollar is going to go down. Now, I think it was yesterday where Obama was out there letting you know that the student loans is not going to melt down the economy, and he was talking about how great the student loan program is for students who can't find jobs whatsoever, and it's very difficult for them to pay it back. But what we see happening right now is that there is a Senate bill, 2726. It is introduced, and what it's called is the Strengthening Forgiveness for Public Servants Act. If passed, the bill aims to get young people into government employment by promising to forgive their student loan debt. Now, we can see right now those people who have student loans who can't find jobs, they can have them modified to stretch the payments out or even defer them. And now we're seeing this bill in there. Now, if the student loan market was fine, you wouldn't need any of this, because people would get jobs and they'd be able to pay it back. And you can see right now this is a very big issue, and this is why you see these things coming up. Now, what's even more interesting is that in California, illegal immigrants will now be able to get student loans. Jerry Brown signed a Senate Bill 1210, which will allow illegal immigrants to sign up for student loans, which of course will increase the debt. There'll be more students on the student loan system, and you can see what's happening here. American students right now are saying, you know what? I'm not going to go to school right now. I'm not going to get into this huge amount of debt and not get a job, so they're holding off. They're not going in. They're losing their student loan base. They need more and more debt, so they're looking at the illegal immigrants. And now these illegal immigrants are filling up many different agendas. The work permits, they're filling up the Obamacare, they're being drafted into the military, and now they're signing up for student loans, because what's happening is the system cannot be maintained, and this is why you see all of this happening. Now, we understand the illegals are being sent all around the country to 23 different states, and what's very interesting about this is the federal government is in dire need of U.S. citizens willing to house the thousands of illegal immigrants who enter the country each week, and they are willing to pay you to do so. Most of the children are ages 15 to 17, but some may stay in our program until they are about 22 years old. And we can see right now that they will pay you about $40 per day to care for each migrant they take in from different charities. And for those people who can take in more than, say, about 6 immigrants at a time, you can make up to $7,400 per month. So you can see right now, this whole program and agenda is to bring all these illegals in to at least try to prop up the system with Obamacare, work permits, student loan, draft them into the Army, and the government is paying people to keep these immigrants. Now, it seems like there's another shooting at a Kentucky school, and it looks like a student was shot. The police and SWAT teams are at the Fern Creek High School, and we have to remember one thing here, is the gun bills are still pending in the Senate. They are waiting for a special event, a false flag event, to push these bills through and get them voted in. And if this is part of the false flag event, what they will do is they will drag it out. It will be plastered all over the news, and all eyes will be on this. And they were trying to get people moved. They want the pro-gun, they want those people who are looking to take away the guns to push the bill through. They want people to be outraged, and we're going to have to watch this very carefully to see how this plays out. Now, a couple of reports back, I talked about Apple and how they have put in like new encryption into their phone, and they're saying that, listen, even if the government, the FBI, NSA, anybody wants us to unlock the phones, we can't because it has special encryption. I just want everyone to be clear about this, and this also goes for the Google Android phones. The NSA most likely still has a back door, because just because Apple cannot unlock it doesn't mean the NSA and other agencies can't get to your data. The best way to protect yourself is either to come up with something on your own or to try not to keep anything on your iPhone that's really important to you. And definitely do not put it up to the cloud because pretty much anyone can access that. So this seems like it's a little bit of a trick to make you feel safe and comfortable to put as much as you can on the phone, and in the meantime, they're using the back door to get it. They're never going to even ask Apple to unlock it because they could just get all that information and anything that they possibly need. Now, it looks like the president of Afghanistan has pretty much signed the bilateral security agreement, and it looks like they're going to keep about 10,000 U.S. soldiers or more, and another 2,000 NATO troops will also boost the numbers. Kabul is also expected to pave the way for another 4,000 to 5,000 soldiers from the alliance to stay in Afghanistan in a non-combat role, and the signed security agreement locks in 10 more years with the United States, Afghan, and NATO. So we can see right now the reason why they wanted this signed is to keep the troops inside the country, and guess what? Now we're going to see a ramp up because guess what? We're headed towards World War III. They're going to be moving more military assets into this region because it is a strategic area, and they are definitely not giving it up. Now, in Sierra Leone, seems like there was a little problem where the residents in Sierra Leone thought that Ebola was finished there, and I'm just very curious in how this got started, but the Sierra Leone's government was forced to issue a statement on Tuesday denying that Ebola had been defeated after hundreds took to the streets in provincial towns to celebrate what they thought was the end of the epidemic. Witnesses reported crowds surging into the streets of the northern commercial hub, and they were chanting, "Ebola is no more, Ebola has been defeated." Now, it seems like there was some information that was kind of leaked out into the media, letting everyone know that everything was done here, they beat Ebola. And you have to remember, Sierra Leone had a quarantine of the people where people were staying inside their homes. They didn't want people roaming around the streets, and it seems like this leak, it seems like they wanted people to get out there and start touching people again, passing the Ebola virus from person to person, and it seems like this was some type of coup to get the people out there. And the government is out there saying, we haven't defeated Ebola. In certain towns, we do not see any more cases, but it seems like they're getting everyone outside now, dancing around, touching each other, and this might ramp it right back up. Now, in my other reports, I've been talking about Ebola and how I believe that this whole entire thing is to get the U.S. military into these regions and pretty much take control of these countries, because as we know, in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, the Congo, Guinea, and many of these, Senegal, and all these areas, there has been a huge amount of natural resources that were just recently discovered, natural gas, oil, and of course China and Russia are there, and the United States needs to be wherever China and Russia are. And what's very interesting, as we see these military soldiers come into the region, there was a very strange announcement from the U.S. ambassador to Liberia. And they came out and said, anyone harboring or encouraging suggestions that the U.S. military is in Liberia on a mission to facilitate the overthrow of the democratically elected government headed by the President Ellen Johnson should forget about it, according to U.S. Ambassador to Liberia. Deborah Malik. The U.S. envoy has made it emphatically clear at a news conference Monday that the U.S. troops are in the country strictly to help Liberia battle Ebola. Now, this is a very strange statement to make. Why in the world would they make a statement that the United States is down in this region to remove the government? It seems like this was their plan all along, and now they're trying to deflect what they were really trying to do. And it seems like they're trying to say, hey, no, this is not. We're not doing this. No. Look over there. And it seems like, yes, this is why they are there. They are there to take control of these countries. You have to remember their playbook in the past was to use terror. They used Boko Haram to get into Nigeria, which did not happen because the government there said absolutely not. We do not want any military soldiers in this area. And of course, they pretty much are beating Boko Haram. They found out that the leader was an imposter. The real one died in 2009. A lot of the Boko Haram terrorist group surrendered already, and this whole thing is completely falling apart. And that 100 girls, 100 boys that were kidnapped, all completely falling apart, and we're seeing that Ebola might be another tactic to get into one of these countries, because this is a very strange statement to make. Now, China is out there, and they are warning foreign meddling in Hong Kong protests. China has warned against any foreign meddling in the recent protests in Hong Kong, saying the ongoing pro-democracy rallies in the city are illegal. And this is coming from the Chinese ministry. We are resolutely opposed to any foreign country using any method to interfere in China's internal affairs. And we can see right now that Chinese officials accuse the U.S. of egging on the protesters. And we've seen this before in Ukraine. Wen Wei Po published an expose into what it described as the U.S. connection of Joshua Wong, the 17-year-old leader of the student group. The story asserts that U.S. forces identified Mr. Wong's potential 3 years ago and have worked with him since then to cultivate him as a political superstar. Evidence for Mr. Wong's close ties to the U.S. that the paper cited included that the report described as frequent meetings with the U.S. consulate personnel in Hong Kong and covert donations from Americans to Mr. Wong. As evidence, the paper cited photographs. Mr. Wong's family visited Macau in 2011 at the invitation of the American Chamber of Commerce, where they stayed, all expenses paid by the United States. And of course, they stayed in the Venetian Macau, which is owned by the Las Vegas Sands Corporation. Mr. Wen Wei Po said that the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency is making a pointed effort to infiltrate Hong Kong schools. It is also alleged that the CIA is actively training a new generation of protest leaders in Hong Kong through sponsoring students to study in the U.S. with the aim of stoking future color revolutions in the city. So already they're breaking down what is happening in Hong Kong. They have ties of Joshua Wong to the United States, where he's been being paid off, he's been cultivated, and we saw this happen in Ukraine. The same exact thing happened. They get a group of people together and they infiltrate the crowds where they're having a peaceful protest, and they start making it they start bringing it up a notch, where they start throwing things, bottles, then it gets a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to provoke the government into doing something, because they realize all governments use force on their people eventually. Even here in the United States, in the Bundy Ranch, they were ready to use force on the ranchers until all those people showed up and had the Bureau of Land Management stand down. And we can see right now they are really pushing this. Even Russia is out there, and they are saying there is a considerable impact of Western media on the situation in Hong Kong, where protests have erupted on September 26, similar to the biased coverage of the Maidan protest in Kiev. It is being covered the riots in Hong Kong, including in the media, the same way the events in Kiev. And if you notice, they're going to keep this on the corporate media over and over and over. And of course, the United States have already come out and said, yes, we are back them. They need freedom. They need democracy. And this is exactly what the central bankers of the United States government does. And this goes on to say that thousands of people have gathered on the streets of Hong Kong to take part in the Occupy Central with Love and Peace protests that began on September 26th. The demonstrators are protesting against Chinese government plans to control the 2017 election in Hong Kong. Authorities and activists have accused each other of violating the order and of the excessive use of force. As a result of the clashes with police, at least 56 people were injured, another 89 protesters arrested on charges of disorderly conduct in public places and blocking government buildings and city streets. And we can see right now that the United States would love to get this really going because they would love for it to grow. They would like the government to be removed because they are threatened by China. This is why they have the pivot to Asia. This is why they're encircling China right now, and they have them contained because they realize China is pushing to be the reserve currency of the world. And if they're not the reserve currency of the world, they are pushing to be the dominant economic force in the world. They're making bilateral trades all over the world. A lot of the countries that are private Western central bank countries are looking at the situation and saying, you know what, maybe we should make a deal with China right now to trade in their currency, bypassing the dollar. A lot of the countries have become clearinghouses for the yuan renminbi, and we can see this is really being pushed. Now it looks like the EU is giving the farmers an aid package because since they implemented all these sanctions against Russia and Russia retaliated with the sanctions against agriculture, the farmers in all these European countries and the United States pretty much are hurting at this point. So in Europe right now, to help them out, they have created a package worth about 165 million euros, and they're trying to help all the farmers, and we don't know how long this is going to last. And again, this is just more debt onto the system, and we can see that this cannot be sustained as time goes on. Now we understand the battle in Lebanon is continuing. The people are rising up and more military assets are being sent into Lebanon. And the Lebanese army now saying that they are battling the Islamic State. They are now in Lebanon. And as we know, they were in sleeper cells and they're hiding out and plain clothes that they wanted us. They all want us to believe this because wherever the Islamic State is, that's where the U.S. government is going to follow. And of course, they would love to get back into Lebanon, back into Libya, back into Yemen to kick out the newly formed governments and put the puppet government back in. And this is why they have the Islamic State, because once that bill in Congress is passed, they'll be able to follow any terrorist group into any country, even though it's against the law, it's against the UN Charter, and it's against the Constitution. It doesn't really matter. They're going to say they have a law and they have the right. And they're saying that the Islamic State is growing in Lebanon, and if they get more weapons down there and more men in the groups, this is going to turn out to be a really horrific situation. Now, it looks like the United States has delivered another shipment for Lebanon security forces because of what's going on. The United States oversaw the delivery of 38 vehicles for Lebanon's internal security forces. The vehicles valued at $1.6 million were meant to bolster counterinsurgency operations against the Islamic State. So we can see more and more military assets are being brought into this area. The United Arab Emirates has requested a huge amount of advanced armored personnel carriers from the United States as security threats in the Gulf region intensify with the rise of the Islamic State. Now they're getting these refurbished and modified mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles. They're going to get about 4,569 of them, and they're going to draw this from the U.S. Army surplus. So these are being brought down to the area because they're all getting ready for what is coming, and this is World War III. And we can see a lot of military assets are being moved all around the world at this point, and it's continuing. Now, Russia is out there, and they're looking at the Syrian situation, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Saturday accused the United States of resorting to military interference to defend its interests in a veiled reference to the air campaign in Syria. Washington has openly declared its right to unilaterally use force anywhere to uphold its own interests. Lavrov charged the United States and its Western allies were portraying themselves as champions of democracy when in fact they were trying to decide for everyone what is good. And of course, this is exactly right. This has nothing to do about the people inside the United States. This has to do with the central bankers and pushing their agenda to each part of the world to keep their system propped up. Most of the people in the United States, they don't want war. They don't want to go across the ocean and send their children, their brothers, their sisters over there to fight. No, they want to live a peaceful life. They want to make a living, and they just want to live every day with their family. And we can see right now the central bankers do not want this. They want people out in war. They want to take over countries. They want to keep their system going, and they would love to have a one world government because to them that would be easier to manage than doing all of this that you see in front of you. Now, Assad is out there, and he is saying that terrorism in Syria cannot be combated by countries which feed it. Combating terrorism cannot be carried out by states that contributed to establishing terrorist organizations, provided them with the logistic and material support, and spread terrorism around the world. And he's absolutely right. You cannot fight the terrorists if you are funding them. And this is why, and pretty much what he's saying, is that this is an illusion. The United States is in Syria and Iraq under false pretenses. Once again, there is no terrorist threat. It was created by the United States, UK, Israel. It's head up by Elliot Scheinman, who is a Mossad agent. This is completely fake, phony, and false. This is to get another world war started because the system is collapsing. And this is why we see the military assets being shipped to all different regions of the world to get ready for what is coming. Now, the FBI is out there, and they are very worried about a cyber attack launch by the Islamic State. Following U.S. military airstrikes in the Middle East, the FBI has issued a warning regarding possible cyber threats aimed at U.S. networks and critical infrastructure, and these attacks could be coming from the Islamic State. The warning is based on threats made by individuals who align themselves with the Islamic State, and they picked this up on social media channels and Twitter. And of course, any terrorist group is not going to be using social media to tell you what their plans are. They're going to do it in secret so you don't know what's going to happen. And you can see this is all propaganda to let that fear-mongering set in. Now, if and when there is a false flag event, you know this will be done by our government officials to get us into war. They will make it look like it's coming from the Islamic State, it is coming from Russia or China to convince you that we have to go after the enemies. And we can see right now they've been preparing this for a very, very long time, and they seem to have everything in place, and it seems like their agenda is being pushed forward to have something occur here in the United States, and they're just waiting for that special moment where they can say thumbs up, you get the green light, go ahead with the false flag event. And they want to get all the people in each one of these countries all riled up and say, yes, we need to go to war. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.